Welcome to CITAM ChurchOnline. This is Karita Mbagara, the Deputy Bishop of Christ is the Answer Ministries. First things first is our topic today, and it is taken from the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 2, from verse 1 to 5. This is Paul writing to the Corinthians, and he says, "And so it was with me, brothers and sisters. When I came to you, I did not come with eloquence of human wisdom, as I proclaimed to you the testimony about God. For I resolved to know nothing while I was with you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. I came to you in weakness, with great fear and trembling. My message and my preaching were not with wise and persuasive words, but with the demonstration of the Spirit's power, so that your faith might not rest on human wisdom, but on God's power." A story is told of a church that had a beautiful stained glass just behind the pulpit, and on it was the picture of Jesus crucified. One day there was a visiting preacher, and he happened to be much shorter or smaller than the normal preacher. A girl who was in service that day watched the preacher, and after some time she talked to the mother and said, "Where is the man who normally stands there and does not allow us to see Jesus?" You see, that child, or this illustrates how very often by our ego and by the way we live and do things, we become a barrier and we stop people from seeing Jesus. Paul was not such a person. He was a different kind of a preacher, a different kind of a minister. And so when he comes to Corinth, he says, "I am not going to be bloated like a toad. I am going to live a simple life. My life is going to be in humility because I want to ensure that Christ is visible." And my brothers and sisters, my call is that can we live in such a way that Jesus will be seen in our lives? Can our words and our actions show the picture of the true Jesus? In this passage, Paul tells us that he had certain plans. And the first one we see is that he had come here to declare the simple gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ so that people can be transformed. He was declaring it because it has transformative power. And the gospel that he was preaching was about Jesus Christ and Him crucified. My brothers and sisters, we need to live in such a way that we are bold and courageous, and we are showing Jesus Christ as crucified. We don't talk of Jesus as one that is palatable to people. It is the real Jesus, and our lives must be that way. We live in a world where people are not courageous to depict Jesus as He is. So we try to edit Him in our presentation, in the way we live, and also in the words that we use to communicate to others. But my call is, can we allow Jesus, the real Jesus, to remain? The gospel that Paul is preaching is that of Jesus and Him alone, His offices. And we know that Jesus was a prophet, was a priest, and was a king. And he knew that was the substance of his preaching. The other thing that I note here is that he says, or he seems to indicate, that the gospel does not change. As he's preaching here, he has come from Athens, where he had tried to philosophize the gospel, like the Athenians would do. But that was going to affect the ministry that he was going to do. But he chose to remain with the original doctrine. The gospel does not change. It remains consistently the same. I think the words of Spurgeon captures this very well when he said, "George Whitefield or John Wesley may preach the gospel better than him, but they cannot preach a better gospel, because the gospel remains the same." And I want to say, my brothers and sisters, we are called to preach the same gospel. The second thing that I note is that he says, and if you read this passage, using the Amplified Bible, that he was going to forego philosophical and theological discussions regarding inconsequential things and opinions. In other words, he was not saying, I think so, this is my opinion. No, he was committed to what God says. It is what God has stated, not I feel like this or the other. His yes became yes, and his no was no. He had a decisive tone in what he was presenting. And my brothers and sisters, the world is suffering because the kind of life we live is so relative. It depends, we depend on what we are seeing rather than being absolute. God is absolute, and he is calling us to be like him, men and women that are given to the truth. Have you noticed also that when Paul comes, he does not start by articulating that he is an apostle and I succeeded so and so? No, that tells me that he is a humble man. He says, I have come to present the gospel of Jesus Christ. I have no personal agenda. I have nothing that I have, in store for myself. All that I do is for God and God alone. Humility is another thing that we must allow to take over in our lives. And then I also want to note that in verse 5 he tells us, he preaches so that your faith might not rest on human wisdom, but on God's wisdom. He has an agenda of presenting the gospel so that people can be transformed, can be changed. It is a gospel that is demonstrated. There is evidence because of transformed lives. Is that how you live? So that people are changed after they read you, because you are a letter, according to the Bible, to be read by those observing you. If you are not living this way, I want to challenge you to change so that your life is witnessing for God and God is being glorified by the way you live. Let's be like Paul and put the first things first. Those are the ideas that I have, that we need to live in such a way that God is the one that is seen in our lives, and he is honored because of our lifestyle, but also because of our words. May the Lord bless you as you contemplate what I have said. Let me hear what you think about it. I would also be honored if you left a comment, and if you have not yet subscribed, it's a joy to have you subscribe in this, and then we will be ensuring that you get a notification every time we put out a clip. Thank you very much. God bless you.